Hello and welcome to Spring Commander Forge Alliance. This will be a really good classic game, but before moving on to the cast, I'd like to make a few small comments. You're welcome to go ahead and move on to the cast. But there was a suggestion in the comments to begin promoting this game on Reddit. I think that's a great idea. But in the past, when I tried actively promoting this game, I would always run into the gamer herd, and it was always frustrating and a big waste of time. Really, one big problem with showing people this game is that there is thousands of gamers out there who feel that they've played it and are not afraid to share their ignorance with a whole bunch of convictions. It gets pretty frustrating because a lot of things that happen in the history in this game. There are many versions. You got Supreme Commander 2 somehow being called Supreme Commander. You got Vanilla, Forge Alliance Forever, and it really makes people who are not used to this very confused. But even though they're confused, they don't know. They think they know, and then they tell everybody else, and then that just leads to more confusion. And really, it's the depth of Supreme Commander makes it a very different game in different maps, and depending on which players play, it's completely different. For those of you watching these casts, I'm sure it's obvious to you. And really, the uniqueness of Supreme Commander gameplay, it makes it impossible to understand for gamers, especially those who are really good at other games, who feel they've got a certain way of thinking about it, and if they see small glimpses of it in Supreme Commander, they feel this is what it is, while missing everything else. And most people really, any good gamer, I mean, if they play this for a while, they'll understand it, but a lot of people make their judgment based on a glimpse of a skirmish or some trailer or somebody else's opinion, most likely. It's really to understand this, you gotta put in the time. And really, these qualities make some become very difficult and very easily misunderstood. And so many myths, it's just ridiculous. So I think this time, when we promote this, it'd be useful to tell people up front that what they've heard about this game is most likely not true. And they should definitely not ask their pro friends about what it is. They should decide themselves. And I would really like to stress that I think we should, because one person on Reddit, it's really nothing. Tell them that Forge Alliance Forever is the new style, it's really a new game, and really direct them to the videos as well as the websites, Forge Alliance Forever, just so they can see it. Try to take that glimpse, the small time of their focus, and try to maximize it. So I'll start the Reddit post and link it below, and hopefully people take the opportunity to make the impact, voting up, all those other things, and correcting the myths. And I'm actually curious to see how it'll turn out. If it doesn't all work out, I don't really care. But also, before moving on to this cast, which is going to be really good, I'd like to leave you with a couple passages from Emerson's Self-Reliance. I believe these thoughts will allow people to better appreciate the significance of Supreme Commander Forge Alliance as the game that presents quality over hype. It's really what is art and why it's so valuable to support something independent and based on your own conviction and go against groupthink. So in any case, reading these passages at any time in history is always a good idea. I'm sure many of you have already heard these. So here are the passages. I heard the other day some verses written by an eminent painter, which were original and not conventional. The soul always hears an admonition in such lines. Let the subject be what it may. The sentiment that they instill is of much more value than any thought they may actually contain. To believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, that is genius. Yet we dismiss without notice our thoughts because they are ours. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Great works of art have no more affecting lesson for us than this. They teach us to abide by our spontaneous impression with good-humored flexibility than most, when the whole cry of voices are on the other side. Else tomorrow a stranger will say with masterly good sense precisely what we have thought and felt all this time, and we shall be forced to take with shame our own opinion from another. A foolish consistency is the hodge-goblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. With consistency, a great soul simply has nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with his shadow on the wall. Speak what you think now in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow thinks in hard words again, though it contradicts everything you said today. So you shall be misunderstood. Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates and Jesus and Luther and Copernicus and Galileo and Newton, every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. And so now let's move on to the cast of the most misunderstood real-time strategy game.
Hello and welcome to Century. We got a game between FightinWords and Scruffy. Scruffy, of course, better known as Voodoo, playing as Aeon here. So you can see this was toward the end of 3599. Scruffy and FightinWords were near the top of the ladder. I believe this is a ranked game. FightinWords player I love playing against. He was definitely better than me, but still not as good as Voodoo, so it was possible to actually get a win from him sometimes. Of course, he did beat me more than I beat him, and this one he is UEF. Actually, I had a number of accounts, so I don't believe he plays anymore, but given how many Smurfs he had, it's totally a possibility. Scruffy going second air, 6 P-gens, speed this up at first. This map, haven't seen it in a while, it's not really, hasn't been on the ladder. It's a bit frustrating, although remembering it, it's actually quite a nice map. It also involves Navy, that could be interesting. Some civs in the middle, protected by Tech 1 point defenses. A lot of reclaim, which is nice. And the top corner here, it allows for players to always have 2 different fights. Because you got to get your forces, your light assault bots, your scouts. You got to deny the engineers. Because really, if you neglect a third of the map, you will most likely lose. Also, there is a couple civs here which are worth some mass. It appears that FightinWords is just straight up running. He built a factory and now he's running. He is running directly into Scruffy's base. So it looks like he's going to try to do damage with his ACU. So he's really given up quite a bit of economy to Scruffy. We do see a whole bunch of factories planned, but only a 3rd P-gen finished for FightinWords. While we already see 6 P-gens and an air factory nearly complete for Scruffy. Meanwhile, here we see, oh, that was a great victory for the striker. He's going to deny that engineer is getting quite a bit of mass. That will be annoying for Scruffy. Scruffy moving out. He's probably going to try to deny this. That looks like a mech marine together with tank. That's why it was so potent. Some engineers expanding to the top. Also NG expanding to the top for Scruffy. He's got Aurora and a Spirit looking up ahead, and now Bomber. And this is now very interesting. FightinWords is going to walk into Scruffy's base. Looks like Scruffy's sound with the Bomber. He's going to get a point defense. See if Scruffy gets a point defense in time. It'll be very critical for him to get it. We do see Scruffy now has turned back. Oh, and just barely finishes the point defense. Very unlucky for FightinWords. He's going to go capture it. So at this point, it's a possibility for Scruffy to self-destruct it. But he's not going to self-destruct it in time. And now FightinWords has just captured a point defense. And Scruffy's going to capture it back. See if FightinWords actually allows him to do it. Of course, capturing the more power you have, the faster you do it with a limit. And this mech marine's still alive at 2 kills. That was the first, the raiding group. So we see elsewhere this bomber for Scruffy has doesn't have a kill, but has the ability to deny that engineer. Meanwhile, FightinWords will be forced into the water. Cost quite a bit of damage, killed a whole bunch of NGs, killed a point defense. And now the base for FightinWords getting a 3rd air with 2 land. Quite a bit of flak. And this mech marine from FightinWords, still great control. Still causing nuisance, is going to kill an engineer. Scruffy's going to get his 3rd land factory. So we can see that very aggressive ACU may have actually paid off. And it looks like FightinWords is going to move to the top, going to try to deny all these expansions. Meanwhile, Scruffy's bomber is going to deny the expanding engineers to the top. Some flak coming up for FightinWords to try to deny that. And also interceptors now for FightinWords. So in terms of land factories and power, I believe these 2 players very even. A little better expansion for Scruffy, but it looks like Fighting is going to try to deny that with his ACU. On the bottom, also much better from FightinWords. Scruffy didn't get to finish his Hydra. It was really that McMarine that Fighting Words had denied a whole bunch of engineers. Appears that it is dead now, most likely to the ACU. More land factories planned for Scruffy, so Scruffy definitely going with Tech 1 land spam. He's definitely seen Fighting Words ACU. And now a naval factory for Scruffy. Scruffy probably wants a submarine to take away any kind of safety Fighting Words might have in the water. But otherwise, now it looks actually Fighting Words might take map control here. Scruffy moving down to the ACU. So the ACU is going to be very far apart from each other most of this game. And if Scruffy uses ACU to establish a base up on top, he's going to have 2 bases versus Scruffy's 1. So Scruffy's got to have some sort of offensive ideas here. Also, air seems to be shifting in Fighting Words' favor. Bombers on both sides, bottom and top. Looks like this bomb. Oh, that engineer dead right before it finished the naval factory. Very unlucky for Scruffy. And also some tanks are now going to move in, going to deny these mass extractors. But a fight is going to happen soon. See a whole bunch of Auroras. And Fighting Words putting quite a bit into his air spam, not surprisingly facing Aeon. That could work out quite well for him. And actually Tech 2 mass extractors for Voodoo. He must have had way too much mass. He had to invest it somewhere, made a Tech 2 mass extractor. So 1 Tech 2 mass extractor, same thing as grabbing an extra 2 Tech 1 mass extractors, so a total of 3. So when you're thinking upgrade or expand, if you can get more than 2 mass extractors, definitely expand. Plus when you expand, you also deny those 2 to your enemy. Looks like now a raider from Scruffy. And here, this could be a problem for Fighting Words. He's definitely rated for this. Some point defenses and raider. Significant land force. While up on top, these Auroras are creating problems. Fighting Words forced to retreat. See if this bomber can make a difference already with 3 kills. A new naval factory started by Scruffy. No sign of any Tech 2, just a massive Tech 1 land spam, 2 engineers on the power spam. It looks like a total of 6 engineers in Tech 1 land factory spam. Fighting Words retreats. Now these bombers are going to be all kinds of problems. Doesn't appear that Scruffy is even trying to win air. So very much air domination from Fighting Words, and in this case it'd be nice for him to pick off all these engineers. That's exactly what he's going to do, because it takes a long time to bring an engineer up. Lost time, lost mass for Scruffy. And while Scruffy finally cleans up, reclaiming his civs. Interesting minute 10, still nobody in the middle. There's actually quite a few mass here, mass spots as well as reclaim. All it takes is a Tech 1 Arty. More land units moving to the bottom from Fighting Words. And Tech 2 land now from Fighting Words, getting a mobile shield. More power. So Tech 2 land is now on the field. You can see Tech 2 land versus massive Tech 1 land spam. Meanwhile, Fighting Words continues to retreat against this Aurora force. A point defense. Scruffy has to be very careful not to just run into it. Scruffy does have some Tech 1 Arty. Should be able to counter the point defense. You can see the effect of those bombers from Fighting Words. He denied all those NGs. All these mass extractors empty, not producing any mass, but finally an NG makes it. Looks like a few Mongoose are going to go to the top. They're going to outrange the Auroras. And on the bottom, very much a stalemate. Scruffy getting some sort of upgrade. Looks like, I believe it's lefty, so it could be Tech 2 or the gun. Point defense, 10 kills, so Fighting Words very good on a little bit of micro problems for Scruffy. And now Bomber still denying this Hydra. Quite ridiculous. And looks like a submarine for Scruffy. It's be interesting if he can put that close to where Fighting Words is. But Fighting Words now with Tech 2 land up on top together with ACU. This will be problems for Scruffy. He has a very good chance to push. Scruffy now nearly done with his upgrade. Getting more Tech 1 land reinforcements, but the numbers are very similar here. There are a couple of Mongoose, and actually Tech 2 engineer, Tech 2 point defenses. This is now a very strong defensive position for Fighting Words. Fighting Words meanwhile moving to the top. This shield right here together with ACU, it's a very big nuisance. Overall, looks like Fighting Words has had maybe a slight advantage in terms of map control, given the play up on top. And air game has been all Fighting Words has been denying engineers, really left and right. Now a whole bunch of build capacity, more engineers, more build capacity for Scruffy on the air factory. But still, it's a very surprising lack of Tech 1 flak, and Tech 2 land for Scruffy. A couple Tech 2 flags should solve this Tech 1 air problem. Scruffy does have Tech 2 engineer and ICU. Looks like a Tech 2 point defense creep, but it is a little late because now there's already a bunch of Tech 2 point defense for Fighting Words. So as long as he keeps scouting, he should be in good shape. Up on top, more Tech 1 point defenses for Fighting. Feels like this force is pretty dangerous against him. I don't know if that's really true. It's mostly Tech 1. Likely he saw the Tech 2 in Scruffy's base, so he can be expecting a couple Tech 2 units up on top here. And looks like now a single RD for Scruffy is going to go to work in the point defense. Fighting Words should respond, just go ahead and kill it. He's going to move on with his ACU. Quite a few RDs going to work here. Point defense is dead. Fighting Words with a couple overcharges. And on the bottom, Scruffy's Tech 2 point defense creep denied. Now Fighting Words getting hit by the Auroras at range. He does not have the gun upgrade, so he is outranged by the Aurora. But he has plenty of reinforcements, and with these two shields, he's really not in danger. Especially with the Mongoose are not going to be outranging the Aurora. This stream of Tech 1 land spam continues to stream up to the top, and Scruffy looks like these Tech 2 mask extractors paid off for him. It's a little more teching. Making a little bit of progress here, but it's still a very even fight, and I think Scruffy against the shields, he's really not causing any damage. He's just feeding Fighting Words. Veterancy and eventually reclaim. Appears Scruffy has decided to get a cruise missile launcher. That's going to be interesting. This is definitely in range of Fighting Words' main base. There are no Tech 2 mask extractors here. It's just a Tech 2 land factory. That would be a good target. And also some mobile shields for Scruffy. But Scruffy redirecting quite a few units to the top. It's a nice placement on the sub from Scruffy in case Fighting Words has to run. But now really both players building up a rather large land force. Here mix of Tech 1, Tech 2. Not really quite, well, this is an attempt to capture. Will be successful, but the engineer is reclaimed. Love to see Fighting Words capture that raider back. And actually Fighting Words making progress with his Mongoose denying a Tech 2 point defense. I think you realize that Scruffy pulled away a whole bunch of units. Now Scruffy's going to be forced to pull them back. Will deny some of their reinforcements to the top. And at some point Fighting Words might consider getting the gun, and if he gets the gun on the EF ACU, Aeon is in big trouble. That would cost him a little bit of power. It doesn't look like he has too much power. And this cruise missile launcher not producing missiles. Of course, the cost on one of these is very similar to a Tech 1 to Tech 2 upgrade. So it's not a very cheap unit early on, but could definitely pay off. So now we're going to see these missiles coming in. We do not see any TMD in this position. Be very disappointing if it hits Tech 1 mask extractors. It's definitely not a good target. He assumed it was Tech 2. Gets a response from Fighting Words. He's going to go and deny the cruise missile. So this is a bit of a mistake there from Scruffy. A big waste of mass. Up on top we see a big push from Scruffy. But it looks like Fighting Words has so many Mongoose here. It'll be a big loss. And a whole bunch of reclaim for Fighting Words. On the bottom, meanwhile, looks like a retreat from Fighting. Probably does not want to make a mistake on playing two different fronts at once. Up on top, Fighting Words now has so much reclaim. This should allow him to take an economy advantage. And looks like quite a bit of investment into Tech 1 Navy. For Scruffy really not paying off that much. So he was definitely in a good shape in this game, but a couple mistakes here. Losing the cruise missile launcher, shooting at their own units. Not really investing too much into Tech 2. We now see some Obsidians. A lot more build capacity for Fighting Words, and as the forces change from Tech 1 to Tech 2, Fighting Words is going to have a lot more Tech 2 units, and that's going to get him victories on the field. Looks like this Tech 2 force now for Fighting Words is pushing up across. And that'll be a very significant move if he can deny all those mass extractors. It'll be a huge map control advantage and mass advantage. There's some Tech 2 engineers moving top, some Tech 2 point defenses. It almost appears that Fighting Words giving a little too much respect to this force. I mean, this is nearly equal numbers, and this is Tech 2 versus Tech 1. If Fighting Words just moves in, he could run everything over, but instead, Fighting Words giving respect, building up a more defensive position. Must be that the ACU's there and he does not want to risk it. Meanwhile, Scruffy now moving in, he's going to run into a whole bunch of Tech 2 point defenses. And he needs to take these out before his shield dies. Some overcharges. He needs to kill that Tech 1 point defense. Some obsidians and support for Scruffy, and Scruffy looks like a successful assault here on the bottom. And looks like this push from Fighting Words finally comes. He should get a victory up on top. So both Blairs getting some success. We see Fighting Words retreating. He does a very nice Tech 2 spam and also making Tech 1 point defenses for emergencies, anticipating a fight directly in his base. And when you're seeing that many obsidians, this Tech 2 tank, probably the best Tech 2 tank in terms of overall strength, overall health, and damage per shot. I believe he can take out a mongoose in 2 shots. And now Scruffy moving in, 15 kills. Meanwhile, Fighting Words is making his way around the map. And in this position, Scruffy could make a couple of Tech 2 point defenses with his ACU. Be a huge problem, although there are some Tech 2 point defenses going up for Fighting Words. It looks like he switched his build capacity from Tech 2 land spam to Tech 2 point defenses. But now these Tech 1 point defenses definitely slowing Scruffy down. Although, nice use of Tech 1 RD. And it looks like it'll be a big problem now for Fighting Words. His base is being disassembled here. He doesn't have too many big losses, but most of his power production is in this position. He needs to start making power somewhere else. I don't think he is. If he loses all of his power, it'll be a huge problem. Huge trouble. All of his shields will stop working, and overall his production will slow down. And Tech 2 point defense is not going to work for Fighting Words. Meanwhile, Fighting Words is definitely making good progress. He just needs to start spamming. He's got plenty of mass. He needs more power. And I think if Scruffy realizes this and starts going after the power generators, he must see the shields are not working. And actually, this Tech 2 force from Fighting Words, nice micro, took out all the Tech 1 from Scruffy that was attacking. Scruffy's going to make his all the way around the map without finishing off Fighting Words' base. So it's really not as bad as it could have been. More power being produced by Fighting Words, producing some more power elsewhere. And now on the bottom here, Fighting Words in a very tough fight. Looks like it might be numbers for Scruffy. Fighting Words retreats, but there are so many mongoose here. Scruffy 34 kills. Fighting Words 101, so much more active ACU for Fighting Words. And these submarines for Scruffy lurking in the water, waiting for Fighting Words to go hide, but he just has so much veterancy. Not really losing much health, and a very powerful Tech 2 force now. This Blaze is going to run into its death. Plenty of Tech 2 point defenses to defend. So Fighting Words with Tech 2 point defenses spread all over the map in very good shape. Meanwhile, Fighting Words looks like with a little bit of a counterattack moving back across the bottom as Scruffy is forced into the water. So here we can look at minute 23. The reclaim is nearly 10,000, but big power problems for Fighting Words. Scruffy with 10,000 as well, so very similar reclaim, but a little more power for Scruffy, not surprisingly given the damage it did to Fighting Words. But Fighting Words creating all kinds of problems now. He is in shooting range of some Tech 2 mass extractors, so all the powers here on the bottom, so it would take a little more effort to get to it. But this mongoose force, quite a few veterans here. Been this mongoose here, 25 kills. And they're beginning to cause real damage to Scruffy, and Scruffy doesn't really have an attacking force anymore. He's got this single ACU and needs to do something with it. And this game is beginning to slip away from Scruffy. He needs to do something. You got a couple obsidians here, but they're just not really getting the job done. And another force on the bottom here, outrunning the ACU, is going to deny quite a few mass extractors. And it looks like these mass extractors for Scruffy cut halfway on the upgrade. So Scruffy, quite a bit of bad luck in this one. The Obsidians are moving in on the Mongoose. If they get close, they kill these units pretty easily. FightinWords, meanwhile, not taking any chances, retreats back. 124 kills. And this will be huge losses. Killing Tech 1 mass extractors, which are more than halfway done on their Tech 2 mass extractor upgrade, is just a tragedy. And now Tech 2 power for FightinWords. FightinWords is really beginning to take over in terms of the economy. For whatever reason, FightinWords retreats. He must feel like he's in very good shape and he's not going to risk it. He hasn't really had too much error lately because of his power problems, but he's beginning to produce it once again. So after he scouts, he needs to realize he's in a much better shape. And then Scruffy, and then go ahead and finish it. Of course, when you got map control, you might as well just go ahead and build up. That's the safe way to do it, but you don't really want to let make a mistake and let the other player end the game. Meanwhile, these Obsidians are actually doing quite well. Some pillars in the area as well for FightinWords. Now this reclaim is still around for FightinWords. FightinWords is very safe, making more Tech 2 point defenses. Really not really clear what he's going to be defending against here. So very safe gameplay. Here, minute 26. Big contrast to what he did in the first couple of minutes when he just ran with his ACU across. That was not very safe. That was definitely a gamble, but it looked like it did pay off. Scruffy making mistakes all game after that. FightinWords is getting a little more reclaim. Got a pretty good looking base here up on top. Quite a bit of air production. More land factories. He's got definitely a lot more Tech 1 mass extractors. And more Mongoose, more power. Looks like FightinWords, that is favorite unit. And I'll actually speed this up a little bit. Looks like neither player looking for an attack. FightinWords in control, not wanting to make a mistake. And Scruffy, really not much that he can do. He does have this nice force, a couple of Obsidians. They might move out. It would do significant damage to this position on the bottom. And one thing to note, there are still a couple Tech 2 mass extractors for Scruffy. Meanwhile, there is really no Tech 2 mass extractors at all for FightinWords. But it's only 2, so it won't make a huge difference. Looks like Scruffy pulling all of his land units back to the bottom, thinking maybe about another assault, as the ACU for Scruffy goes to the top. FightinWords is now going to get the gun. It's a good sign that an attack is most likely going to come soon. And there's no point defense here, it's just a bunch of walls. So there's really no defense here whatsoever except a couple Mongoose. Eventually here there is Tech 2, but you can deny quite a few mass extractors. And now this force from FightinWords getting quite large. Also some flag here and shields. FightinWords with the gun. And it looks like he's going to move in the direction of Scruffy's base here, minute 29. Bit of a sub fight here. Looks like FightinWords got a navy of his own. And now Tech 3 land, we did not see this. Scruffy has moved up to Tech 3 land. This could be a very interesting move for him. And looks like with a couple Harbies leading the way, he's going to run everything over on the bottom. Probably could have done it just a little earlier. He will need some help here up on top, but of course, using Tech 3 land against the ACU that has the gun is a very dangerous thing to do unless you're going for the kill. Scruffy thinking about a Tech 2 point defense, but he's going to attack, be attacked a little too quickly. Also now air domination from FightinWords. And a couple of Harbies are going to try to help. Scruffy avoids FightinWords ACU. Is probably going to do a couple overcharges. And now Harby comes back. Looks like a full retreat from Scruffy. Did quite a bit of damage. And now FightinWords, if he can deny the build capacity on the Tech 3 land factory, probably be the best move. Meanwhile, Scruffy here, 51 kills. FightinWords 155. And now the Harbies coming back. I think they're actually doing quite a bit of damage against the Mongoose. Most of the Mongoose are gone. FightinWords now finding himself all alone with a bunch of Tech 1, but he does have the gun. Nice overcharge on the Harby. Scruffy moving in. A total air control from FightinWords. FightinWords, I'm not really sure is Scruffy going after him, but FightinWords still has a pretty large force. And one thing about Scruffy, he's lost all the build capacity on his Harby production, Tech 3 land factory. And any Harby that comes out is going to get overcharged immediately. So Obsidians come back, and now Scruffy has got a whole bunch of units killing his stuff in his base. He's lost most of his engineers, and he's lost air. So really doesn't look like there's a way back for Scruffy in this one. And these Mongoose have just been absolutely beautiful this entire game. Not sure if that looks like these ones are pretty fresh. Looks like all those veterans that were alive for at least 20 minutes of the game died in this last assault. But it definitely paid off. And now Scruffy moving in. Looks like he's calling in the towel. Throwing in the towel. Apologies. Calling a GG. FightinWords still playing safe retreats against an inferior opponent. Finally going to move in. And Scruffy, better known as Voodoo, dies against a player we haven't seen in quite a long time. It'd be nice to see him back on FAF. A good move early on with the ACU, and now some gunships moving in. And really, on this map, AN's usually quite good. But it was the Mongoose. The Mongoose from FightinWords doing quite well. So hopefully people enjoy this one.